When you finally let go, life flows naturally, a Buddhist teaching. Take a moment and turn your attention inward. Not to the things you hold in your hands, but to the quiet weights you carry in your heart and mind. If you look closely, you may notice that each of us walks through life with an invisible backpack, filled not with objects, but with memories, expectations, and unspoken fears. Most of the time, we do not even remember how these things got there. For many of us, the first burden in that backpack is the past. It shows up in the form of old regrets and unfinished stories. Those subtle whispers of, "If only I had," or "Why didn't I?" We replay conversations long after they have ended, holding on to wounds from years ago as though they were still fresh. Yet often, it is simply a habit of the mind, looping the same scene again and again, hoping the outcome will somehow change. But the past, by its nature, never rewrites itself. The second burden is the future. This one is harder to recognize, because it often looks like responsibility or careful planning. But there is a difference between wise preparation and the restless chain of what-if scenarios that fill our minds. The Buddha pointed out that this forward-leaning anxiety is another form of suffering. It keeps us living in a world that has not yet arrived. Then there is the weight of the present moment itself, the silent pressure of all the "I must be" and "life should be" expectations we place upon ourselves. We carry an inner blueprint of how things ought to unfold, and we suffer when reality refuses to match it. In the Bhadakarata Sutta, the Buddha expressed this with clarity. Do not chase after the past. Do not place your hopes in the future. What is past is left behind. The future has not arrived. He was not rejecting practical thought or wise care. He was pointing to a habitual movement of mind, the tendency to reach backward or forward instead of resting with what is here. These burdens are closely tied to what the Buddha described as the 4 forms of clinging. The first is sensual clinging, 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿, the belief that happiness depends on securing certain experiences, wealth, affection, comfort, admiration. When these conditions are absent, we feel incomplete. When they are present, we worry about losing them. The second is clinging to views, ditthuppadana, attaching so tightly to our opinions that we cannot allow them to be questioned. The third form, clinging to rules and rituals, silabbhatupadana, appears when we believe salvation lies in following the right outward pattern. And the fourth, perhaps the most subtle, is clinging to a sense of self, attavaduppadana, the belief that there is a solid me that must be protected, maintained, and defended. We build an image of who we think we are, and then spend years trying to hold it together. In the teachings on dependent origination, clinging is compared to fuel sustaining a fire. As long as fuel is added, the fire keeps burning. Our suffering works the same way. We continue to feed it, through grasping, resisting, insisting that life should be other than it is. There is a quiet irony here. The tighter we grasp, the more things slip away. We see this in relationships, in parenting, in our careers, even in our spiritual practice. It is like holding sand in your hand. When your palm is open, the sand rests gently. The moment you squeeze, it escapes between your fingers. The Buddha summarized this truth in the phrase, "Sabbe dhamma nalam abhinivesaya." Nothing whatsoever is worth clinging to. This is not a dismissal of life's beauty or importance. Instead, it is a reminder that everything conditioned is fragile, shifting, unable to offer lasting refuge. Whatever comes together will eventually change. Before we can learn to put down these burdens, we first have to see them clearly. We must recognize the weight of the past we drag behind us, the imagined futures we rush toward, and the hidden expectations we impose on the present moment. Only when these burdens are brought into the light can we understand the exhaustion we've been carrying and glimpse what it might feel like to finally set them down. The Buddha pointed to three universal characteristics of all conditioned phenomena, three truths woven into the fabric of reality. When these are understood not just intellectually but directly in our own experience, the habit of clinging naturally loses its appeal. The first truth is anicca, impermanence. Everything is changing, including the one who is observing the change. Most of us accept this idea in theory, but we rarely live as if it were true. We tend to imagine that stability is the norm, and change is the disturbance. Yet the Buddha pointed to something far more profound. Change is the very nature of existence. Nothing is fixed. Nothing stays still. Not our thoughts, not our bodies, not even our sense of self. Consider your own experience. The emotions that felt so vivid yesterday, where are they now? The partner you married years ago is not the same person lying next to you today. Even biology reminds us of this truth. The body is constantly renewing itself, with cells dying and being replaced. It is less like a stone and more like a river, continuously flowing, never entirely the same from one moment to the next. In the Nava Sutta, the Buddha used the image of a boat tied to shore with ropes. Over time, the ropes decay and eventually snap, and the boat drifts free. Letting go does not require force. When we see impermanence clearly, the grip begins to relax on its own. The second truth is dukkha, the inherent unsatisfactoriness of conditioned experience. This is not only the pain of obvious suffering, but also the subtle sense that something is always slightly incomplete. You reach a goal and feel joy, but soon the craving for the next thing appears. A pleasant moment arises, and almost immediately the mind wants to prolong it. According to the Buddha, the root problem is not the world itself, but our insistence that things remain exactly how we want them to be. In the Fire Sermon, the Adhita-pariyaya Sutta, the Buddha said, "All is burning. Burning with greed, hatred, and delusion." But this burning is not only dramatic turmoil, it also includes the low, steady friction we live with every day. The anxiety humming beneath our plans, the envy that flares when we compare ourselves to others, the restlessness that keeps us searching. The third truth is anatta, not self, the absence of a fixed, enduring identity. The person you were at 15 is not the same person you are at 40. Your memories, emotions, beliefs, and preferences shift over time. According to the Buddha, there is no single solid me behind these changing patterns, only a dynamic flow of conditions coming together and falling apart. In the Fina Sutta, the Buddha used vivid metaphors to describe the five aggregates. Form is like foam, appearing solid from a distance but empty when examined closely. Feeling is like a bubble that arises and bursts. Perception is like a mirage shimmering in the heat. Mental formations are like the trunk of a banana tree, layer after layer without a solid core. And consciousness is like a magician's illusion, compelling yet impossible to pin down. So much of our suffering comes from defending a self we assume to be fixed. Do they approve of me? Am I worthy? Will I lose this identity I've built? When the notion of a solid self softens, even slightly, a great deal of tension dissolves. The world becomes easier to carry. Together, these three characteristics reveal why clinging cannot bring lasting peace. You can still love deeply, work wholeheartedly, and participate fully in the world. But beneath your actions, there is more spaciousness, less fear, less grasping, less pressure to force life into a shape it cannot hold. This is not disengagement. It is a wiser way of being with what is. What does it truly mean to let go? First, it may be helpful to understand what letting go is not. It is not indifference, resignation, or turning away from life. It is not a convenient misuse of impermanence to avoid responsibility. Genuine letting go has nothing to do with abandoning life. It has everything to do with relating to life more wisely. Letting go means loosening your grip on craving, ego, and rigid expectations. It does not mean stopping your efforts or withdrawing your care. You still show up for your work, your relationships, your commitments. You still live ethically, thoughtfully, and wholeheartedly. The shift lies not in what you do, but in how you hold what you do. Imagine holding something with a clenched fist versus an open palm. A closed fist is tight, strained, and defensive. An open palm is spacious and relaxed. In the same way, letting go is not about removing things from your life, but about changing your relationship with them, allowing flexibility, and ease. In the 𝐂𝐴𝐦𝐦𝐬𝐞 Sutta, the Buddha compared the Dhamma to a raft used to cross a river. Once you've crossed to the far shore, you don't continue carrying the raft on your head. The lesson is simple, yet profound. Wisdom includes knowing when to hold on and when to release. Let life flow naturally does not mean sitting back and expecting the universe to deliver everything to you. That is a kind of passive, dreamy spirituality that avoids the reality of cause and effect. Life requires engagement, effort, and wise action. According to dependent origination, everything arises through conditions. We cannot control all conditions, but we do have agency in choosing which causes we cultivate. When you plant a seed, you cannot command it to grow, but you can nourish it with sunlight, water, and care. This is what true letting go looks like. You act with sincerity and skill, then release your grip on how everything must unfold. You plant seeds of kindness, clarity, and ethical conduct, and allow results to ripen in their own time. You can love deeply with an open hand, without turning the other person into a possession, or demanding they remain unchanged. You can work diligently with an open hand, without tying your self-worth to outcomes you cannot fully control. You can hold opinions with an open hand, recognizing them as perspectives, not unshakable truths. Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "Letting go gives us freedom, and freedom is the only condition for happiness." That freedom becomes available the moment you stop clinging, the moment you open the fist. This is the paradox at the heart of the path. Living fully engaged in the world, yet no longer entangled by it. Understanding letting go on a conceptual level is one thing. Actually living it, softening patterns that have formed over years, requires a path. It unfolds gradually, layer by layer, as we develop certain inner capacities. Let's explore 3 essential movements of this inner work: recognizing, understanding, and releasing. They are not rigid stages, but interwoven aspects of one continuous process. The first movement is recognizing, sati, or mindful awareness. Before we can let go of anything, we must first see clearly what we are holding. The strange thing about clinging is that most of the time, we do it unconsciously. So the practice begins not with forcing ourselves to drop anything, but simply with looking. What am I grasping right now? What am I resisting? Notice the stories that replay themselves, the should and must statements that constrict the body. Notice the tension in your jaw, the raised shoulders, the shallow breath. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha described being aware of the body, feelings, mind states, and mental objects. This is not harsh scrutiny, but gentle observation, acknowledging this is present now. And something subtle happens in that recognition. The grip begins to loosen, but recognition alone doesn't complete the process. We also need understanding, panya, or wisdom. Once you see what you're gripping, the next question is, why? What is the fear beneath this attachment? Often, clinging is a strategy for safety. We cling to control because we fear uncertainty. We cling to being right because we fear being insignificant. We cling to certain expressions of love because we fear abandonment. Understanding means looking at these underlying beliefs with honesty. Is it truly the case that your worth depends on your achievements? Is it really true that without control, everything will fall apart? The Four Noble Truths guide this inquiry. Recognizing dukkha, the stress and strain we feel, and seeing samudaya, its origin in craving and grasping. When we understand the root clearly, the inner pressure begins to ease. This naturally leads to the third movement, releasing, pahana, or abandoning. In the Buddha's teachings, abandoning does not mean cutting something out with willpower. It is often gentler. You stop feeding what harms you. If you're holding a burning coal, the moment you truly see, this is burning me, the hand opens on its own. Seeing leads to understanding, and understanding leads to a release that feels organic, not forced. This process is almost always gradual. You let something go, and it returns. That's not failure. It's simply how deep conditioning works. Ajahn Chah expressed it beautifully. If you let go a little, you will have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you will have complete peace. He was describing a gentle unfolding, a slow opening of the hand, a steady lightening that accumulates over time. You don't need to let go all at once. Just keep practicing. Keep seeing. Keep understanding. Keep releasing what you can in each moment. Gradually, you'll notice something shifting. More spaciousness in your mind. More ease in your heart. Not because the outside world transformed, but because you are holding it all differently. You remain fully engaged in life, working, loving, continuing your responsibilities. But inwardly, the grip is lighter. You're not battling reality as fiercely as before. And here's the quiet discovery. Letting life flow naturally doesn't mean becoming someone else. You still experience joy and disappointment, effort and rest, connection and vulnerability. You remain beautifully and imperfectly human. But the inward struggle softens. You lean less on the past, cling less to the future, defend me less tightly. You become like a bird crossing the open sky, fully present, yet not needing to own the sky. Or like a fish moving through water, completely at home, yet never trying to possess the ocean. This is living in the world without being trapped by it. Fully alive, fully here, yet inwardly free. Every moment of clear seeing, every tiny release, every time you choose openness over tension, These are moments of liberation. They accumulate and reshape you. So pay attention to what you're holding. Ask why you're holding it so tightly. And when you're ready, allow it to rest in an open palm instead of a clenched fist. Life is flowing. It always has been. And as your grip softens, you begin to move with that flow. Not by force, but by the quiet wisdom of a heart learning to let go.